fourth working session of the experts of the Steering Committee of the Institutional Reform of the Economic Community of Central African States met in Libreville, in the Gabonese capital, with the aim of modernizing the ECAS institution. Meeting in Abidjan in Ivory Coast on 17th and 18th of June, finance ministers and central bank governors from 15 West African countries on Tuesday expressed their strong desire to establish a single currency in 2020 to replace the CFA franc. This June, the whole world celebrates the World Refugee Day, with 70.8 million people at the end of 2018 fleeing war or persecution of all kinds, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. These are our top stories. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast. Following the fourth working session of the experts of the Steering Committee of the Institutional Reform of the Economic Community of Central African States, the Gabonese capital is hosting the ministerial meeting of this Steering Committee for the modernization of ECAS institution. The member countries of ECAS wish to review the institutional framework of their organization. This ministerial meeting of the Steering Committee held in Libreville is therefore of paramount importance since it concerns the institutional reform of ECAS. This reform could help the institution to face the current challenges in the sub-region. The objective is to review the architecture of the institution, in particular making sure the General Secretariat turns into a commission, a project among others that will be submitted to all ministers. A number of surveys highlighted weaknesses and dysfunctions in ECAS performance and image. It is therefore wrong to improve the efficiency and modernize the functioning of the institution. All eyes are now on the reform. The president of Copilry constantly highlighted the issues at stake for the past 3 days of work. A recent report from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees announced that at the end of 2018, 70.8 million people were displaced due to war or persecution, an increase due in particular to asylum seekers fleeing the political and economic crisis in Venezuela. According to this annual report published on Wednesday, 19th of June, these 70.8 individuals are uprooted people who have fled wars or persecutions.
Of last year we reported 68.5 approximately million people, refugees, displaced people, meaning refugees in their own country, asylum seekers, and this year the figure has increased by almost close to 71 million people.
Most of these refugees are actually in a neighboring country, and this unfortunately means in poor or middle-income countries.
Large number. Peru is the second largest recipient of Venezuelans after Colombia. And they are really overwhelmed by the presence of all these people. And they have my full sympathy for that, because they have really been burdened in an extraordinary way. But we have been urging them to, just like Colombia and Ecuador, to keep, and Brazil, to keep the borders open, because these people really are in need of safety, of protection and so forth.
Chancellor Angela Merkel, in her migration policy, had taken the decision to open her country's borders to thousands of asylum seekers, a decision approved by many. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is therefore calling for the management of the rise of refugees in Europe. Finance ministers and central bank governors from 15 West African countries meeting in Abidjan on 17th and 18th of June expressed their strong desire to create a single currency to be effective in 2020 to replace the CFA franc. The West African countries have therefore agreed to adopt a single currency from 2020. It remained to know what the name of the currency will be, but ECO will be its name. The name was agreed upon by the International Committee of Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors of the area, who met on Monday and Tuesday in Abidjan. Considered as a sea snake which has for 30 years been spoken about, the single currency of ECOWAS would replace the CFA franc and 7 other national currencies, which are not convertible, among them making trade difficult within ECOWAS. The management of the single currency should be entrusted to a federal central bank, and its exchange rate should be flexible, according to the report adopted by the International Committee. The major founders insisted on the importance of strengthening the macroeconomic convergence of 15 countries. Respect for the timetable for the implementation of the single currency will depend on the efforts of each country in this area. Although optimistic, Adama Kone, Ivorian Minister of Economy and Finance, notes that there are still challenges to overcome, but without specifying the nature. The findings of this report will be submitted to ECOWAS heads of states and government at their next summit in Abuja on 29th of June. Representatives of member states of the International Authority for Development are meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Discussions focused on the situation in Sudan, buffeted by bloody repression of political demonstrators. Over the past 6 months, the Sudanese people, with a strong participation of women and youngsters, have clearly and courageously demanded a new path for their country, that of democracy, political pluralism, of security and prosperity. A historic opportunity for Sudan.
Challenge before us now is how to encourage the parties to return to negotiation and finalize their discussion on the remaining outstanding issues, with a view to ensuring a smooth and peaceful transition. The Sudanese stakeholders must be called upon to refrain from statements and actions that will escalate tension and spoil conditions necessary for the resumption of talks.
It is therefore everyone's wish to see Sudan developing, but in a peaceful environment, especially for the peace and stability of the region. For the first time under the Fifth Republic, a former president will be tried for corruption. The Supreme Court dismissed the latest appeals by former head of state, his lawyer, and former high magistrate to avoid a trial for bribery and influence peddling. While Nicolas Sarkozy will be on trial for the first time under the Fifth Republic, the former president is not through yet. For another issue known as the Big Million Affair is coming up, and the trial should be held in Paris in the coming months. Nicolas Sarkozy, a political retiree since his defeat at the primary in 2016, was suspected following investigations in early 2014 of having tried to obtain secret information in a procedure concerning the seizure of his diaries in the Betancourt affair through his lawyer in exchange for a promotion to a prestigious position in Monte Carlo. The affair, which had a year earlier ended in mistrial. At the end of the investigation, enameled with numerous appeals, the judges had ordered on March 26, 2018, a trial for corruption and influence peddling, in accordance with the requisition of the Public Prosecutor's Office in October 2017. The High Court had also examined in a quick procedure the appeals of Nicolas Sarkozy to challenge their referral to the criminal court. The court later rejected them, which confirmed the trial, according to a source familiar with the case and one of the defense lawyers. The case originated in wiretapping by the former head of state in another investigation that of allegations on Libyan financing of his 2007 campaign. Thanks to these wiretaps, the investigators had noticed that the former president and his lawyer used to communicate through cell phones under a false identity, including that of Paul Bismuth for Sarkozy. The fourth working session of the experts of the Steering Committee of the Institutional Reform of the Economic Community of Central African States met in Libreville, in the Gabonese capital, with the aim of modernizing the ECAS institution. Meeting in Abidjan in Ivory Coast on 17th and 18th of June, finance ministers and central bank governors from 15 West African countries on Tuesday expressed their strong desire to establish a single currency in 2020 to replace the CFA franc. This June, the whole world celebrates the World Refugee Day, with 70.8 million people at the end of 2018 fleeing war or persecution of all kinds, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. That's all for our newscast today. Stay tuned on Gabon 24 for more news.